So we just read the Brothers Grimm story, Thumbling's Travels. Do you want to give a summary and then we'll talk about it?
Yeah, so there's a tailor's son, and he was born very small and the size of a thumb. Um, so one day he told his father that he wanted to go out into the world and that it was something he needed to do. So he went to enjoy one last meal from his mom.
And
And
the
the
father
dad,
also
I
gave him like a little needle with a little bit of wax from the candle as a handle,
Mhm.
like for his sword.
Mhm. So yeah, the dad was supportive and he had one last meal from his mom, but when he went to look into the pot to see what how the meal was going, the steam from the food lifted him up into the air and through the chimney, and he floated, and I think he landed at a master's house. And
Well, he eventually made his way,
yeah,
yeah, to a master's house.
yeah. And when he went there, he was able to get a job. But he didn't like the food cooked by the mistress of the house because it had too many potatoes and not enough meat. So he told the mistress that if she keeps cooking the food, that he would write on her door that's like a little song or something like about the there being too much potatoes and too little meat in the food.
Yeah.
So the mistress was enraged and she chased him around the house. And he kept kind of teasing her like throughout various hiding places. And eventually she grabbed a cloth and I think was I think able to get him in the cloth. I don't quite remember. Um, wait, no, actually, no, she was chasing him with the cloth, and I think kind of trying to hit him with it. Um, and eventually he was chased out of the house. So he kept traveling, and I think he took like additional jobs. Um, I don't quite remember, but
He like yeah, he decided not to work at a master's and
yeah,
then he went to like an innkeeper's and started working for them.
yeah. And I think those innkeepers had maids, and that they started to dislike him because he was able to see everything they would take from their bosses, and take for themselves. So I think it was like food and other items. And then he would go tell the innkeeper. Um, so one day they got sick of him, and one of the maids noticed him hiding in the grass. So she took a cloth and like was able to scoop him up and and tie it up, and she flung that towards the cows they kept. And one of the cows, a black one, ate it. So he was like stuck inside the cow, and it was dark and he couldn't see how to get out. So one day that cow was being milked, and he he cried out that he was like in the cow, but the milker couldn't hear him with the noise. So he tried again, and I think he they heard him, but they still couldn't tell where he was. So they walked away. And then one day he heard the innkeeper say that they were going to kill the cow, and he once again tried to yell out that he was in there, but it was to no avail, and the cow was eventually killed. But he was lucky, and he was able to avoid like the cutting of the meat when the cow was killed. But then his next problem was that I think that cow was being made into, I think, black pudding. Um, so yeah, when he was like in the pudding, he tried to he cried out again, but he wasn't heard by the cook. And eventually that black pudding was being made into sausages.
No, no, just
Uh,
that's the sausage happened before the black pudding. Anyway,
oh yeah, yeah.
they're cutting up
But
the black
anyways,
pudding into
yeah,
slices to serve to a guest, and he's able to get out that
yeah,
way after like avoiding the knife nimbly.
yeah. So like the mistress of the house was cutting up the now sauce blood's black pudding uh, before sausage, and he cried out, and I think the mistress still didn't hear him, so he used all his strength to jump out of the pudding case, and he ran out. Um, and I think when that happened, um, he he encountered some robbers.
I think that happened before, but anyway,
Uh,
yeah, just you want to tell about the robbers and then how he gets saved by the fox.
yeah, so he encountered the robbers, and um, they noticed he was small, and they asked him if he would be willing to take part in stealing from the king. So he agreed, and they went to the castle, and um, he went to the door where sentries were guarding the king's treasure, and he determined that he was small enough to fit in there. So he went into the treasury and started. He tossed a few. I think they're called thables or
Thalers,
thable
yeah, just
sailors.
gold coins. Mm.
Um, and at that moment, the king went in to inspect his treasure, so he hid behind one of the coins. And the king noticed that a few of them were missing, so he told his guards to be on the lookout. And when he was alone again, he tossed more and more of the coins outside, and eventually the entire um, he was able to toss out the entire thing. And the guards heard him and went back in, but he kept hiding behind coins and taunting them. So they gave up and kind of let it be, and he was able to toss everything out.
Mm.
Uh, so yeah, then the whole innkeeper and sausage stuff happened. Um, so yeah, and then once towards the end, he jumped out of the black pudding, and he went back home with one of the coins he had kept for himself from stealing from the king. Um, and he hadn't carried more, even though the robbers offered it to him, because yeah, he was too small and it couldn't carry more anyways.
Mm.
So he gave his father the
Wait,
wait,
wait. So he
so
was
no,
taken
so
home by a fox. Like
yeah,
the fox had accidentally started to eat him
yeah,
somehow.
um, yeah. And then he got stuck in the fox's throat, and he asked the fox if he would release him, if he'd promise him all the chickens from his dad's house. And the fox said that yeah, he wasn't much to eat anyways. Yeah, if he promised him that, he would take him home. So the fox took him home, and uh yeah, he found his dad and gave his dad the coin, which had quite a bit of value. And the dad gave the fox the chickens. Um,
yeah, all the
and
chickens he had.
yeah, yeah, and that was it.
Yeah, and it was kind of that kind of reminded me of the prodigal son, where the son goes away and has various adventures and shenanigans and comes back almost penniless, or penniless. I guess he's not penniless. Thumbling isn't, but I think he doesn't. It's not much money. Um, and I think still the point at the end seems to be that your father will, values your life much more than other things. In the prodigal son story in the Bible, the father, makes the other son jealous, who's been like a faithful kind of, worker by having like a huge feast when the son comes home. But the point is that it's an amazing thing for a parent for a child to come back. Yeah, what did you think of that story? I noticed that I mean, he fell in with a band of robbers and they like emptied the king's treasury, and didn't get punished for it or anything.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like
Hmm.
I
Did you notice anything about that story? I mean, yeah, I noticed also he went to various mass, or he decided not to. Yeah, he was a little like the prodigal son, maybe in that he didn't like find a trade or anything. He ended up working at an inn, which is maybe a less sort of
uh
promising career or something, maybe than like working at a master's.
yeah,
And
but
mm,
no, like I felt like the a lot of the characters kind of didn't act as he kind of assumed they would. Um,
like how so?
so like Thumbling wasn't interested in wealth that much, it seems. But then again, the robbers, I was expecting them to kind of rip him off and kind of use him, but
But no,
they
they
kind of
we
kept their
didn't mention,
promise and offered him like a lot of the coins, but he didn't want them anyways.
and we didn't mention this, but they asked him to be their leader.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was yeah, so in that case there seemed to be kind of honor among thieves, in a way.
It does seem like
But
throughout the story he's like tossed about. He's literally sometimes
yeah,
tossed about, like at the very
yeah,
beginning when
yeah.
he wants to see his mother's last meal for him before he leaves, and like he's carried away by the steam up the chimney and
Mhm.
outside.
Yeah.
And then yeah, the robbers use him, and then he goes through the insides of a cow after being uh yeah, sort of
Mhm.
imprisoned or gotten rid of by the
Yeah.
maids in the inn. You know, he's
Yeah.
always being tossed about, but he's always able to kind of like survive. Seems like that's
Yeah.
kind of the main thing is, and then the fox is also takes him. That's basically he survives.
Yeah. And
As the story says at the beginning, he has
mhm.
courage.
Yeah, and he like never seems like discouraged or pessimistic, even with all those things happening to him.
Yeah. I don't know if he has time to be. He's just
Yeah.
constantly like moving around, very active.
Yeah.
Anything else you notice about the story?
Mm.
I noticed there wasn't a transformation. Like I think in the Hans Hedgehog story we read, there was kind of like a transformation. But I guess Hans was not tiny, right? So I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, um but yeah, they both were kind of born wrong in a way. So
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, like there isn't a transformation here and Thumbling just remains himself
Mm,
uh he's still but loved by his dad, regardless of
mm,
his condition.
mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
I
and
think
he
in
was the
Hans,
one that asked to go out. That wanted
yeah,
to go out.
yeah, and I think in Hans the Hedgehog, I think his parents kind of viewed him as a burden more.
Yeah, they wanted him out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something about the sort of growth that Hans had on himself that
Mm,
was an indication of some kind of,
mm,
you know, s- um, uh, something wrong with him. Whereas Thumbling was kind of, yeah, he was more of a that's just his condition. Yeah, that's
mhm.
just who he is. Like Hans
Yeah.
transformed later on by through much effort and sort of knowledge was able to get rid of his hide.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this story kind of felt more like adventures, uh,
Hmm.
like just adventures of like Thumbling. And
Yeah, it did
like you said, there's not,
a series of
yeah, like a
danger
series.
adventures, seeing
Uh,
various types of people out in the world, and then coming
yeah.
back more
Yeah.
wise and experienced.
Yeah. And kind of like showing his wit too. So
Yeah.
it's kind of presenting him as maybe just kind of developed already, and kind of using that to kind of, like you said, survive.
Well, I mean, he develops by,
Yeah.
yeah, sharpening his wits and
Mhm.
everything. He gets lots of experience.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's no like obvious transformation. Yeah, anything else you notice about the story?
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, it seems like he taunts a lot of people.
Yeah,
He he gets back at the world in some way or just has fun in some way.
yeah, yeah. I was just thinking of Bart Simpson when I like, kind of
Yeah,
when
he's
I was hearing this.
mischievous.
Yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, I thought, yeah, this was more just like a fun story about the various kinds of characters and things.
yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, yeah, I didn't see that much depth to this story, but not all stories need to have that. This is more just enjoyable and sort of about the more the various, colors of the surface of life. Okay.